What's going on, guys? My name is Psyche, and welcome to Binding of Isaac Repentance. This is probably the first roguelike I've ever played that ultimately got me introduced to even more roguelikes. And it's probably a game that I know a lot of you play as well. Now that with the recent DLC Repentance, this game is still fairly popular. So, without further ado, let's get into an Eden run. Now, for some of you that don't play this game, I'll kind of give you guys a brief overview. So basically, there are these colorful characters that you can play as. Basically, every time you beat the game or a route with one of them, you unlock something new. And the character I'm playing as is Eden, which randomizes your loadout every time you play. So you get random stats and random pickups every time you play as Eden. We're gonna start with Holy Light, which is probably one of the most solid starting items you can get. What Isaac really specializes in is randomness, because there are just so many items in the game, much more than Dead Cells. Historically, there are some items that are so overpowered that if you pick it, it's basically an easy win. But lately in Repentance, they kind of nerfed it so that every single item has a similar power level, which, is probably pretty good. So in the item room, I find a sacrificial dagger. So normally how you're supposed to get it is that you're supposed to walk over the spikes to take some damage, or you're supposed to use a bomb to blow open the rocks. And I did neither because I started with this box item thing. I still don't know what it's called. I probably know what 3/4 of the items do in this game, but I still don't know what some of them are called. I'm gonna blow open the tinted rock and get the small rock upgrade, which is extremely valuable. But yeah, I've been slowly chipping away at the characters that are introduced in Repentance, namely the tainted characters. I kind of just lost motivation. I haven't gotten all of the unlocks yet, but I've gotten most of them, I would say. Maybe someday I'll go back and finish them. Each character has its own flavor that brings it out compared to other characters. For example, Judas starts with only one heart container, but he has the hardest hitting tears in the early game. And I picked up a High Priestess card, so I just kind of yeeted the boss out of existence. There are a lot of crazy stuff you can do in this game. There's also Magdalene, which starts with 4 heart containers, so probably one of the most healthiest characters that you can start as, but she is very slow. So in some way, a lot of the characters are balanced so that, it's balanced. So that it gives them a distinct advantage, but not too much advantage. The main deal with Eden is that every time you play, his loadout is completely random. So you never know what kind of build you're gonna get. Now, given that most items you get in a run are pretty much random, you can't really do a build the same way you can in Dead Cells, although there are items that can manipulate the luck. There are a lot of hidden mechanics in this game, and I probably don't even know all of them, considering that Repentance kind of changed some of them. But the floor I am on right now is the Downpour, which is brand new in Repentance. So I might as well, showcase more of the DLC. We're gonna head into the boss fight. I didn't look enough to know what it's called. I mean, it's kind of just instinctive for me to just skip the boss intro, so I probably don't even know what half the bosses in Repentance are called. But yeah, the reason why I didn't want to take any damage in this fight is because if you take any red heart damage on a floor, then it decreases the chances of a devil deal spawning, which is this room right here that you're seeing. Basically, it allows you to trade away your maximum health for powerful items. However, in this case, these items really aren't too exciting, so I decided to just not take it. And you might be wondering, well, how do you know what all of these items do? The thing is though, you're not really supposed to. The real flavor of this game is that the items you get are pretty much random, and you're trying to experiment and see how they shake up the run. It's kind of been like this since Flash Isaac all the way from 2009. Speaking of which, I have been playing the Flash Isaac when I was in elementary school. I remember there was this one DLC called Wrath of the Lamb. And then of course in 2013 or something, Rebirth came out, and this is the game that you're seeing at the moment. So in the item room, I find a D6, which allows me to reroll items to something else. So this is one of the few ways you can manipulate luck in the game. So if you see a really bad item, you can just use D6 to reroll it to something else. Hopefully it's better. But I did get hit a moment earlier there, so I did lose out on the devil deal for this floor. Experimental treatment, no thanks. I'm gonna re-roll that, and that is much better. I go in the shop, pick up the soul heart, and then I'm gonna go into the mines, which is also brand new in Repentance. So again, trying to show off as much of the DLC as possible. Now, for those that know this game very well, you might be wondering, well, what about the key pieces? Because in Repentance, there is a new route that you can go to, but it requires you to get 2 knife pieces throughout the Downpour and the mines levels. But the thing is, normally how I play is that I just go to the chest every single run because I think it's the most interesting. I know they did change the dark room so that you don't get really bad drops when you enter it, you actually get some pretty decent devil deals. I'm gonna enter the challenge room, I find a health upgrade. I'm not gonna take it just yet because I know I got the D6 and I can probably reroll it to something better. I think it's okay if you're greedy, especially if you have good items. In terms of health, that's probably the one thing I need to improve on right now. I only got 3 hearts, which if you're not careful, you can die fairly easily. I decided to take the unknown item, but it's just suplex. I think what it does is that it slams one enemy to the floor, dealing a lot of damage, but I just didn't like it. The D6 is just way too valuable to pass up, and I re-rolled it to Super Bandage, which is one of the most solid health upgrades in the game. So as much as I am afraid to say it, I actually have more hours in this game than I do Dead Cells, because I've just been sticking with this game for a fairly long time. I've definitely thought about doing Isaac content previously, it's just that this is a game where you can't really define a run, because in Dead Cells you can pick any weapon that you want and you can do a run with it. But in Isaac you can't really do that, because the real flavor of a run is just from what kind of items that you get. I decided to re-roll the piece of toast, which increases my total health, and it gave me a separate item called Forget Me Now, which is a one-time item that resets the whole floor. I didn't take it, even though right now thinking back I probably should have to just take it out of the item pool. Now you might be thinking, well, if all the items in the game are random, then surely you can't win every single time, right? Surely there will be times when your luck is so bad you just straight up lose no matter what. And yes, that is true to a certain degree, but again there is a skill level tied to the game. If you're really good and you know the patterns of enemy attacks inside and out, you can do fairly well in every single run. It just might take a while. I know there are streamers out there that have like 100, 200 win streaks, and that is honestly pretty insane. My highest win streak is like 20 something, and this is from all Eden runs. So this boss, I still don't know the name of it, but the flavor of this boss, which I know is introduced in Repentance, it's very good, because you throw these bombs at it which reveals its flesh so that you can actually damage it. This is a type of innovation that I want in this game. Gonna go into Devil Deal. I didn't like what I was seeing, so I decided to re-roll it, and then I see an Abyss. So this item allows you to consume the items in the current room and convert it into an attack fly, so it's that red fly that you're seeing that's revolving around me. Basically, it just shoots out in a direction, dealing damage whenever you attack. I wanted to see if I can get a battery so that I can eat the mom's purse item as well, because it just gives me 4 pills. But I didn't find it in the shop, so you know, might as well just take it. Got some decent pills, and we're gonna get into the next level. Now normally the D6 is not an item I will pass up on, but you know, whatever. And because I have Curse of the Blind, it's impossible for me to tell which items show up because they all appear as question marks. So you know, I decided to just eat it with the Abyss. It can't be a bad item if I don't know what it is. But in terms of damage and stats, I'm doing pretty well right now, especially Holy Light. It's just really good. Some items are only good in the early game, but some items are just so good they can pretty much single-handedly carry you through the run. There is an item called Brimstone that lets you shoot out this beam of lasers. There's an item called Dr. Fetus, which is a reference to Super Meat Boy, that lets you shoot out bombs instead of tears. There's an item called Mom's Knife, which replaces your tears with a knife and you can charge it up to throw it further. And it just does insane damage. And not only that, if you combine a lot of the weapons together, it creates some really interesting synergies. So you can create a Brimstone laser that has homing abilities. So again, a lot of the flavor in the run really depends on the items you get, because everything you do in this game is pretty much a surprise. And you know, I just got hit by a champion monster there because they deal double damage to you. So instead of dealing only half a heart of damage, they deal 1 entire heart instead. Gonna fight the boss now. Again, I don't know the name of this boss. I don't think it's possible for me to learn them anymore because it's pretty much instinctive for me to just skip the boss intros. Still looking good, it's just that I still am a bit low on health. It's probably the one thing I can improve on. Of course, get hit one time there, not a problem though. Gonna get some health back. And I don't know what this item is, I decided to risk it and just take it, but I guess it's okay. Matchbook gives you some bombs, the matchstick, and a black heart. I pick up the Fool card, which allows you to teleport to the starting room of a floor. So basically that item on the bottom right corner, you can only use it once. There are a lot of one-time use items in this game, such as pills, cards, and runes. You really have to find the right opportunities to use those, but most of the times they're pretty good. I've definitely had more insane runs before, but honestly this is still pretty decent. I remember the times when Blue Baby was the hardest character to play in the game, all the way back in Rebirth era. And here I'm going to enter a library and see 5 different books. So I'm going to consume them all with the Abyss and get 5 attack flies, which is very, very insane. And the reason why I'm picking up Monster Manual is to give me a familiar for this floor. I'm also using the Book of Belial to increase my Devil Deal chances. I know for a lot of you that don't play this game, the stuff I'm saying right now is just pretty random, but a lot of this will make sense if you just play the game. So I think everyone, including myself, were really surprised by the tainted characters that were introduced in Repentance, because there's essentially like 16 or 17 of them. Some of these I really like and some of them I don't really like. I think the Tainted Lost is probably one of the worst designed characters in the game, because you literally cannot get hit even once. You're just instantly dead. I think there's a fine line between difficult and unfair, because there is a reason why I don't play the Cursed Sword and Dead Cells. I don't think it's like a really legitimate playstyle. Obviously, if you're just doing it for some fun, then yes, you can do it, but realistically speaking, how often are you gonna win with the Cursed Sword? It's just asking for the impossible. You are going to slip up eventually. Especially in Isaac, where everything is so unpredictable, there will be times where you just slip up and take a point of damage. And for moments like that, it just feels really bad when you just lose for whatever reason when playing as the Tainted Lost. And I know some of you are gonna bring this up, but how do I like the new characters introduced in Repentance, namely Bethany and Jacob and Esau? So I know a lot of characters don't like Jacob and Esau because you're controlling 2 characters at the same time. A lot of them get stuck on terrain and you just take unnecessary damage. But honestly, I'd rather play one of those runs than play Tainted Lost. Because with Jacob and Esau, you can actually go to the alternate floors and take both of the items on the pedestals if you line them up correctly. So there is actually a lot of ways you can play them without being too restrictive. And I'm gonna enter the boss rush room. I really don't like any of these items, so I decided to just take Abel and then just yeet out of there with the Fool's Card. Normally, you're supposed to fight through waves of bosses, but if you have some way to teleport, you can just get out of there instantly. Gonna move on to the next floor, so from here on out, every single point of damage I take will be 1 entire heart instead of half a heart. So the game's gonna be more difficult from here on. I took the Polaroid in the mom fight because I wanted to access the chest, because that's the usual route that I go to whenever I play Eden. That being said though, I forgot to mention this earlier, but I picked up a Diplopia item, I think that's what it's called. Basically, it's a one-time use item, but it allows you to double all the pickups in a room. So if I find like 4 hearts, then I can double that to 8. And because the one thing I'm struggling right now is, again, health, you might think that 4 hearts and a half is a lot, but honestly, at this point of the game, it's really not, because any point of damage you take will be 1 entire heart, so you really can't slip up a lot. And this is probably one of the most annoying enemies in the game. I have no idea why they made this into existence. The stationary ones were bad enough, and honestly, this is just, it's a bit too much for me. Luckily, I have a pretty overpowered loadout, so I was able to take it out rather easily. And at this point, I still don't know what that little red fly does. It kind of just circles around enemies. I'm assuming it stops enemy projectiles, but it's just, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's doing a lot. We're gonna fight one of the rarest bosses in the game. So I thought about like 10 seconds what this boss is called, and I just can't come up with it since he's really rare. We're gonna find a health upgrade, which I'm gonna take. And starting from this floor and on, there are no treasure rooms anymore, so it's becoming increasingly difficult for us to get newer items. That being said though, Devil Deals are still available, if you get them obviously. And then while this game does have a skill cap, it's not that hard, I would say. It's never one of those... It's never like Dead Cells, where I spent like 2 years on 2BC and I just couldn't beat it. This game, it's really not that bad. Especially if you get lucky and get some pretty powerful items, then you can pretty much win every single time. I think the enjoyment factor of this game is how much of the game that you actually know, because like I said before, there are a lot of hidden mechanics. And knowing some of the synergies will definitely help. It takes you back in one of those old school gaming moments where like you don't know what an item does if it's on a pedestal. I know this kind of thing was pretty big in 2009 when the game was just introduced, but honestly these days people would rather want to know what they're picking up. So I know there are mods out there, I just haven't really gone into installing them. But most mods I downloaded when the game was at Afterbirth Plus are usually just cosmetic ones. There was like a mod where it turns your character into like a PogChamp face whenever you see a really powerful item. So I guess that's pretty cool. And speaking of which, I'm gonna enter the second variant of the mom fight. Just a lot of bullet hell going around, but honestly it's not that bad. Going to Devil Deal. Since it's hidden, I don't think I took it. I just think it's a little too risky and I really need the health right now. I decided to ascend onto the Cathedral because that's how you access the chest. If you took the negative instead after the mom fight, you can access the dark room instead, which is like a completely different route. So in this challenge room, I decided to just again use the Fool to get out of there. I don't want to deal with all this stuff. Now you might be wondering, well, this looks so easy. I'm just kind of two-tapping all the monsters in a room. The thing is though, the build that I have right now is pretty good, but honestly, there are stronger builds out there. I know some builds are so strong that they lag the entire screen because there's just so much going on at a single moment. You can see how my army of flies is doing a lot of damage, so Abyss is really carrying the game here. We're gonna approach the boss fight by now. This is the Isaac fight, which is the boss you fight at the end of the Cathedral. I know they changed a lot of the existing boss's movesets, especially this one. There is a light beam attack, which you'll see a bit later. Normally, you can just hide in a corner and just negate all the damage. Like, it's impossible for you to get hit if you're in that corner. But now they changed the patterns of the light beam, so it's this one attack right here, where all the light beams are kind of just spreading across the entire room. I'm sure there's still a reliable way to dodge it, it's just that I never really found out. But again, my red flies are just making really short work of the boss. It's a good thing I found that library. It's definitely given me a considerable edge in the later game. And now, finally, we're gonna enter the very last level of a run, the chest. And here is where I decided to use the Diplopia item, because every single chest that you open in this floor will contain an item. And since you're given 4 at the beginning of the floor, I can double that to 8, which is very, very good. And most of these items I get are fairly powerful, maybe except for Mom's Bra, because it freezes all the enemies in a room for a brief moment, but other than that, it's kind of useless. I decided to just take the black hole because at least it sucks up projectiles. And yeah, now is not the right time to be taking damage. Find 2 adversaries in the room. This is very, very bad because the laser attack, you kind of have to be very close by to the boss to avoid it. And especially now that with 2 bosses in the same room, it's very difficult to dodge some of these attacks. So again, just like before, we're gonna struggle a little bit with health. So can I pull through and beat the run? Well, just wait and see. I didn't want to deal with all the monstros, so I decided to just take out my black hole and suck everything in. There are also different sets of items you can collect in this game. For example, because I collected 3 fly-related items, I received a transformation to my character called Lord of the Flies, which gives me flight, so it allows me to fly over spikes and rocks, and it allows me to turn enemy flies into friendly flies. There are a lot of different transformations available in this game. I know the most powerful one is still the Guppy transformation, which requires you to pick up at least 3 different Guppy items in a single run. If you get it, then you're pretty much unstoppable. Now obviously, because everything is luck-based, there's really nothing you can do to ensure that you get these transformations every single run. It's really just comes down to luck. The items I picked up at the beginning of this floor are also very powerful. But this is definitely one of the shorter runs I've had. As you can see on the top of the screen there, it only says like 24 minutes. Usually a run typically takes like 50 minutes to an hour. So I'm kind of just speedrunning the game right now. It's slightly shorter than an average Dead Cells run. I know Dead Cells runs usually take almost always over an hour, but obviously there are going to be exceptions. There are also ways to break this game where you get infinite items. I've seen some people that spend like 3 to 4 hours in a run because they try to break the game. There are also different game modes. There's green mode, which requires you to collect coins so you can buy items from the shop, that being the only way you can get upgrades. Though I'm not really a fan of greedier mode, it's basically a just more hardcore version of the original green mode, which really requires you to get insane drops in the shops in order to succeed. So in that game mode, because you can just reset every single time until you get a powerful starting item, you can just do that for every single character. Obviously, this kind of behavior is not, really fun. This isn't something that I would normally do in a normal run like this one. I just kind of restart and see wherever the game takes me. Repentance is the official version of the Anti-Birth mod, which had similar content to this game, but they kind of remade it to official content. But even still, I'm at the chest and I still haven't found the final boss yet. This is the run where a lot of people go, because I know in Flash Isaac, the chest was the only floor after the Cathedral. the dark room used to not exist. This is where I usually went the majority of times I play this game. The only times when I do other routes is when I want to do the unlocks. So they introduced a new route in Repentance where you rise up in floors after you beat Mom. Basically, you go back to your home, retracing all the way back your way up the basement, and then you fight a brand new boss with like multiple phases, which honestly is one of the most coolest bosses I've seen. Maybe I'll show that off in a future video. And I'm going to get the conjoined transformation, which allows me to shoot 3 tiers at a single time. So again, very powerful. Run is looking a lot stronger now, but by this point it doesn't really matter because I'm so close to the end of the run anyways. Now you might be wondering, if all the items in the game are good, does that mean the more items you have, the better your chances of winning? Well, actually though, there are some items in the game that are so bad that you will actually lose if you take them. For example, there's an item called the Dunce Cap, which allows you to shoot tiers in diagonal directions, which is very different than shooting tiers originally, because you're supposed to shoot them in a straight line, and it's fairly easy to manipulate where it's gonna go, but especially when the tiers are diagonal, it's really hard to control them. So you're much more likely to die if you take that item. We're gonna enter the final fight. Not really a problem. There you go, it's dead. This build is just pretty overpowered. And we're gonna see the final ending of the game. This is only one of the few that are available. If you go to a different route, there are gonna be different endings. So that's it for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this run of Binding of Isaac Repentance. This is a game I go back a lot, so maybe I'll do more videos on this in the future. But either way, thank you all for watching. I will see you all tomorrow for Enter the Gungeon. Stay tuned, and I'll see you later.